when you actually look at where buyers spend their time across the buying process, we as sellers have such a small percentage of that time. In fact, the total amount of time that buyers spend with us is about 17%. Now, you can see, and I don't need to read this in detail, right? Like the other time is spent actually just looking up online about what you offer and meeting with other people in the business that are involved in the buying decision or talking to other people. But I think the thing that 2 other competitors in the deal, that means at best I get maybe 5-6% of my buyer's time across the buying journey. And so this really raised the bar for me on why leading a world-class demo is so important, because it does represent one of those significant chunks of time we have with customers. Now, if we think about this from the buyer's perspective, because right, the goal is to deliver a really buyer-centric demo. The thing we have to keep in mind is we operate as buyers the same way we operate as humans, right? There's a rational side and an emotional side to the way we make decisions. And let's say I'm looking at a sales tech offering. In my mind as a buyer, there's a rational voice saying, should I really be buying this right now? Maybe budgets are tight. Maybe the team is really overwhelmed with change. I'm going to have to take this thing up to my boss and my CFO. Do I really feel that confident about the need for it right now? While on the emotional side, we're saying, oh, I know my process right now or the way I'm approaching that problem isn't perfect, but at least it's the devil I know, right? And I know where the flaws are. I know how to manage it. These 2 voices come together. And what we find is often the result that ends up is the buyer talks themselves out of doing anything at all. It's not a no, it's not a yes. It's just, I'm going to kick this thing down the road. Now, the last thing I'll say about this is we actually did some research to identify how often this happens. So if anybody's on the fence around, yeah, but is this just a couple customers out of 100? What we found is on average 38% of customer-initiated purchase attempts. This does not mean I reach out to a customer and try to get them to take and buy my product. This is customer says, I've got a problem with the way something is getting done today. I want to do something about it. But by the time they get to the end of the process, they're like, forget it. It's more hassle than it's worth. I'm just going to stick with the devil I know. And so as we enter into demos, I think the key thing that's always in my mind and the key thing that I am trying to solve for is I've got to address that risk aversion, right? I've got to be mindful that even though I may have a better solution, that risk aversion really prevents us from making the right decision. And now, before I talk to you about this, I think the thing that I always love is like, if we reflect on how we behave as humans, right? I, for example, used to be super religious about going to the gym. And then I got busy with my job and I stopped going. And now there's all the evidence in the world that tells me you need to go to the gym. You'll sleep better. You'll have less anxiety. You'll fit in your clothes better. I could go on, right? There's studies about it. There's constant social proof about it. Yet I still make the same decision not to go. Now, let's say I walked into the doctor's office tomorrow and the doctor said, Jen, you're at major risk of a heart attack if you don't start increasing your cardiovascular activity. My butt would be in the gym the next day, right? Because now all of a sudden there is a cost to my behavior versus prior to that doctor's visit, there wasn't. Now, if we reflect on that, right, we make stupid decisions as humans all the time. We ignore better because we protect what we know because what we know is safe. And so when I go into a demo or when I'm watching a demo, one of the most key elements to it is really not assuming the customer understands the cost of what they're currently doing. More often than not, they don't, right? They know there is some pain, but perhaps they don't fully appreciate how deep and how far and how wide that pain is costing them. And so the mistake a lot of sellers can fall into, and I've certainly fallen into it in the past, is this belief system that if I just tell my customer or teach my customer all the benefits and upsides of using my product, basically painting the promised land, that will pull someone out of this risk aversion. The reality is it doesn't, right? It's the same example with me not going to the gym as much as I used to. What we have to focus on is making it so that the pain of what they're currently doing today is so much bigger than the pain that they're going to have to go through to buy our solution, that it creates that urgency for them to act, or what customers associate with the pain of change. So it's not actually the pain of your solution, it is the pain of getting from point A to point B, where what I'm doing today versus being like a happy customer of yours. That's the pain. And that's the thing that lots of customers pull back from. The storytelling around the problem is something I just don't hear as many sellers do. Usually it's storytelling around how great life is once they buy the solution. So I think that's where the storytelling aspect really comes in. There are three kind of like steps in a demo approach, right? Which is discovering how are they getting the job done today. The flaw I will say I see some sellers make is we do discovery around what the customer thinks they need. And I think we can all admit, like I've been a customer before and I've been wrong. Like the customer actually probably sometimes misses things. So we don't want to figure out what they think they need. We want to figure out how they're getting the job done today. And that's the point at which what you just said, Jordan, right? Then we are showing them there is a cost to how you're getting that job done today. So this term here, COI, I love this term. It's cost of inaction. So let's say you don't buy from me, you don't buy from anybody else. Here is the cost you are accepting. This is the place where we have the best opportunity to teach, right? Because so often our clients realize to this point down here, like, I know it's not the best way, but it's getting the job done. And they fail to appreciate all the cost and risk that actually accumulates. We've got lots of great stories of companies who've done this. This cost of inaction is imperative for the buyer to be aligned with us as the seller so that we are both looking at the problem in the same way. So what you just said around, hey, there's three things I commonly observe. Fabulous, right? Now, tell me, how are you different? Like, talk to me a little bit about how your process is set up today, just so you understand it. And then before we jump to our solution and why it's better, we've got to work on building that cost. If we cannot associate with a cost, it's going to be really hard to win that equation where we're trying to say the pain of you keeping doing what you're doing is actually going to outweigh the pain of buying us. The reality is it's just customers are probably okay with the alternative. So if I don't have drift, maybe I've got a longer win process, but it gets the job done, right? Maybe it's not the best it could be, but it's okay. The reality is, like, if I'm a drift rep, I'm out there teaching that buyer, you think it's getting the job done. You think there's no associated cost with it or the cost is minimal. Let me broaden that problem and show you how big the problem is before I'm ever introducing like the drift solution to it. So I think absolutely in places where you're commoditized or it's like, that's a nice to have, is where these things are really imperative. We are just teaching our customers to value things that our competitors can claim. At best, we may get like a first to market advantage there because we were the first to teach them. And some industries, candidly, they don't have any differentiation. So that's all they can do. But if we do have a differentiation, rather than leading with it, like, hey, here's what makes drift so unique and so cool, and hoping customers come along on that journey with us. The idea is find the problem that unique differentiator really solves that customers don't appreciate and teach them how big that problem is before you introduce that unique differentiator. So if you've got a unique differentiator, that's a great advantage that a lot of companies don't. If you don't, you can still do this and see it work because they look to you as the rep who came and taught them. It's this idea of return on pain eliminated. We all love our ROIs and our, case studies and things like that. And there's a time and place for it. But I think the idea here is I'm discovering how the job gets done. I'm teaching them the underappreciated cost with how they're getting the job done today. And then when I introduce my solution, now I've got a buyer who views the pain the same way I do. And I can show them that it's not about an ROI. It's actually about creating a return on eliminating this pain, which is why this step is so important. I think I've seen sellers, I myself have fallen in this trap where we discover how the job's getting done today. We hear the thing we want to hear. We know it's kind of broken and we jump right to where our solution can help them. Avoid that at all costs, right? Because what we miss there is really deepening the pain and taking that customer to a place where they now will look at the cost of our solution relative to the cost of the pain, instead of the cost of our solution versus the cost of doing nothing, which is
Lisa's like, what the heck?
I'm for sure a ringer. Like I should have been kicked out.
Total ringer. He was a ringer from day one.
All right, so basically set the stage. So in this case, it's like anyone that has a call center can use us. We talk about how the TAM should be scored.
Jennifer, so thanks for hopping in, Jennifer. It's really good to talk to you finally face to face. Just to dive right in, I'm curious, how are your current reps researching prospects before they reach out? Start looking at all these kinds of things. But there's a lot to it. I have to first do the research. I have to dig around, then I have to extract the information. And then I have to figure out how I'm going to use it in the outreach. And let's say that
You are a CRO, and that we've talked a little bit prior to this around, your needs, right? Like we're seeing, I mean, the world has changed a lot in the last few years, and the stakes are higher than ever. And forecasting is becoming a top priority for board members.
Awesome. Cool. So I typically like to start off, Jennifer, on your website, and maybe we even start with the problem. So I know you liked how Jordan did that. And really what we're seeing across B2B is a lot of the people that hit your main CTA. So for you, looks like it's this contact us. Most of them aren't getting into the sales funnel. And worse, you could actually even be paying for people to get interest in your product only to go to your competitor.